He was made in America and is a top recruiter for a worldwide terrorist operation.
He's like a rock star to jihadists in the West.
He has legions of followers worldwide, very much an enemy of the United States.
The U.S. claims to be the protector of human rights in the world.
Demonstrates that he does not honor his U.S. citizenship.
With the command of English, Arabic, and the internet, U.S. citizen Anwar al-Awlaki is linked to terror plots including the failed Times Square bombing, the attempt by the so-called underwear bomber to blow up a plane on Christmas Day, the thwarted attacks of the Fort Dix 6, and the massacre at Fort Hood, which killed 13. He is the Facebook friend from hell, surfacing with multiple spellings of his name.
You've got mail.
He answers a lot of his emails.
What's in those emails between al-Awlaki and accused shooter Major Nidal Hassan?
They have not been made available to us.
How would you characterize him, his beliefs?
He's a good man, and I don't know anything about him that is not good.
But you will see how the married imam with children led a twisted double life.
Do you remember where he was picked up for soliciting prostitutes in San Diego?
Well, it's not far from the mosque.
When we see sexually repressive environments that people do strange things at times.
And then they blame the West for it.
The more crimes America commits, the more mujahideen will be recruited to fight against it.
And now we ask, was Anwar al-Awlaki a key part of the 9/11 attacks launched from inside America?
That opens up a whole series of additional questions, not only about al-Awlaki, about the people who were helping him, about the way the U.S. government analyzed those people and handled them.
The timing issue is too much of a coincidence to be reality.
I don't know if al-Awlaki was flipped or not. Does this look like he was flipped? It's possible.
Here in New Mexico's land of enchantment, the city of the crosses, Las Cruces, lies at the foot of the Oregon mountain range on a high desert plateau. Hello, I'm Bill Hemmer, Fox News reporting. April 21st, 1971, Anwar al-Awlaki, the first U.S. citizen on the CIA's capture or kill list, was born here. And so began his American. After graduating in 1972, his father Nasser continued his studies, bringing his wife and young son first to the University of Nebraska, then to Minneapolis, before returning to Yemen in 1978. 12 years later, al-Awlaki would come back to America and embark on a path to worldwide terror. Our national correspondent, Catherine Herridge, goes deep into al-Awlaki's mysterious life here in the States. But we begin with foreign correspondent Greg Palcott on the streets of Yemen.
Yemen, it's a country like no other. Smell the spices, incense, perfume, and you realize you're in a different world on the southern flank of the Arabian Peninsula, where a conservative and intense regard for the Islam faith is strong, where sharp, shiny, though mostly ornamental daggers are must-wears, and where the addictive and intoxicating khat leaf is chewed by locals for hours. One look at the countryside says it all. Rugged, barren, poor, and desperate, it's described as a corrupt, failing state. Longtime President Ali Abdullah Saleh has said his job is like, quote, dancing on the heads of snakes. Yemen is the ancestral home of al-Qaeda founder and head Osama bin Laden. Yemenis and others fought as mujahideen against the Soviet Union in Afghanistan in the 80s. After the war, ranks of foreign fighters were welcomed back to Yemen. The bombing of the USS Cole in 2008 killed 17 crew members and was a sign of the anti-US threat of a Yemen-based al-Qaeda. Early last year, Yemeni terrorists joined up with their colleagues in next-door Saudi Arabia to form al-Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula. And then there are the tribes in Yemen, maybe more important than the government itself.
In fact, the tribes are strong enough when they decide that this or that deserves protection.
The tribe of Anwar al-Awlaki, called the Awlaks, dominates the southern Yemeni province of Shabwa. Nasser al-Awlaki, with his degrees from New Mexico State and the University of Nebraska, in 1978 returned to Yemen with his family. Now we're driving through Sana University. It's a big place.
Yes, very big.
Our freelance producer in Yemen, Nasser Arabi, is kind of the Harvard of Yemen, huh?
Yes, very prestigious, of course.
Anwar al-Awlaki's father was the president here twice.
Yes.
His Western credentials and powerful tribal ties earned him Yemen's Minister of Agriculture job, as well as becoming a figure in Yemen's ruling political party and confidant to President Saleh. Is he well respected in Yemen?
هل الأب محترم في اليمن؟
Yes, he's very kind,
Yes.
Author and terror expert Saeed Ubaid.
He's still in contact with the ministers, with the intelligence people, with the... Yes.
And Anwar's father groomed his son for the West and the best.
This is the secular high school he attended when he was back here in Sana'a, Yemen. Among his classmates, the children of top government officials and businessmen.
After graduating high school, Alaki decided to return to the land of his birth.
Alaki returns to America to get a college education, but instead it's a journey that will set him on a path to treason. Catherine Herridge picks up the story.
In 1990, Anwar Alaki, then 19 years old and an American citizen, walks into the U.S. Embassy in Yemen to apply for a J-1 visitor's visa to the U.S.
J-1 visa is a non-immigrant visa that's issued to a foreigner so that they can come to the United States.
Former State Department agent Ray Fournier has looked deeply into Alaki's past.
Why do you think, if he's an American citizen, he would get a visitor's visa to come to this country?
Well, he did get a benefit. He gets 2 scholarships before it's said and done.
That's right. Alaki receives full funding for 2 scholarships totaling $20,000 to study in the U.S.
He has the American passport, he has the Yemeni passport, and when it suits him, he uses the Yemeni passport.
Right, exactly.
And he would not have qualified for those scholarships if he had been an American.
No, he's absolutely forbidden to have it.
Whose money was it?
That's the taxpayer. He enters the United States through Chicago in June 5th of 1990. On June 6th, he goes out to the Social Security Administration and he applies for a Social Security number.
He lies about his place of birth.
Paul Sperry is the author of the books Infiltration and Muslim Mafia.
He says he's born in Yemen instead of Las Cruces, New Mexico.
And he provides his Yemeni passport and the J-1 visa as proof of who he is and his identity. The Social Security Administration issues a Social Security number to him on June 8th of that same year, which is 1990.
Now joining the Colorado State Rams at Fort Collins with his education paid for and a new Social Security number, Alaki begins to pursue his life as a Muslim preacher.
We always hear that there is hatred against the United States. There are reasons for this resentment.
Coming up next, Alaki begins his life as a holy man and becomes a close spiritual advisor to 2 of the 9/11 hijackers.
By the early 1990s, 20-year-old Anwar al-Awlaki is already adept at gaming the system. Now enrolled at Colorado State University in Fort Collins in the Department of Civil Engineering, he has already lied twice to American authorities. He says he was born in Yemen, not New Mexico, to get at least $20,000 in scholarship money. And he lies a second time when he applies for a Social Security card. That fraud will continue 3 years later when he applies for his American passport,
which he does on or about November 18th, 1993. He puts down that he's born in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and he provides a birth certificate, the accurate, valid one that he had acquired from birth in New Mexico. But the Social Security number that he provides is the Social Security number which he had secured by fraud 3 years earlier. So it's a continuation of the fraud.
One of the big issues, especially dealing with the Middle East and Salafist issue, is the concept of taqiyya.
Brian Wiedner worked 24 years in the FBI and served as supervisor of the Arabian Peninsula Squad.
It's considered a good thing to lie to your enemy if it will advance the cause you're fighting for.
After graduating with his fellow Colorado State Rams in the class of 1994, Alaki leaves Fort Collins and moves an hour south to Denver. He lives in this apartment complex and gives lectures at the Denver Islamic Society on South Birch Street.
He's certainly preaching the word of Islam at that point.
But the 25-year-old is ambitious and wants to be the imam of his own mosque. After just 2 years in Denver, he picks up and moves to San Diego. In Southern California, Alaki becomes the imam of the Rabat Mosque, a small and unassuming building in a seedy part of town.
The mosque is about 10 miles east of downtown San Diego.
He also continues his studies as a graduate student at San Diego State University. One man who knows Alaki and heard his sermons asked us to conceal his identity.
What did he look like in those days?
This guy was small and scrawny.
On a driving tour, we see Alaki's neighborhood firsthand.
This is East San Diego. This is like the ghetto.
Was it the ghetto then?
Oh, yeah.
We go to the mosque on Saranac Street to learn more about Alaki's time there between 1996 and 2000.
Al-Rabat is just in a residential neighborhood with non-Muslim neighbors.
So do you like having the mosque on the block here?
You know, I don't mind it.
Nick Shirelli has lived on this block for 25 years.
You don't remember this Imam Alaki from when he was here, do you? Dark hair, glasses, thin, small.
You know what? That probably would describe over half of the people that go there.
Okay.
Where's the point in your mind where he makes this transition to a radical thinker?
Charlie Allen spent 47 years in the CIA. He was the first to identify Alaki as a threat to the U.S.
I believe he came radicalized and realized he had a certain power, that he could develop followers with his way of presenting his brand of extremism to young people here in the United States.
When he preached in the mosque, did he have a commanding personality?
I hate to use played out words, but yes, he was charismatic.
And every person among them will have 2 wives.
His specialty is painting a very elaborate graphic picture of the carnal pleasures that await the martyrs in their paradise.
And the marrow of their shanks would glimmer beneath the flesh.
2 wives may be in paradise, but for those here on earth, he preaches a different story.
Because it's a very disgusting prophet. The whole thing is disgusting.
So where are we right now?
We're about to hit El Cajon Boulevard, which apparently somebody found very entertaining.
What Alaki finds entertaining were the local hookers. The Imam is now married with children, but this memorandum for the record from the 9/11 Commission shows Alaki was arrested twice in San Diego, 1996 and in 1997, for soliciting prostitutes. And there's more.
He was picked up for loitering around a school.
I do know that those were charges, yes, ma'am.
So what was this strip like, 96, 2000?
It was prostitute.
Do you remember where he was picked up for soliciting prostitutes in San Diego?
Well, it's not far from the mosque.
This holy man, apparently he was getting lathered up by his own rhetoric and sermons.
Glimmer beneath the flesh.
You saw the mug shots.
Correct. He has a very healthy beard. He's got his glasses on.
Traditional Islam is significantly sexually repressive.
They cannot have sex, they cannot think about it, they cannot even look at a woman. Well, they're going to have aberrant behavior.
Author of the book Leaderless Jihad, Mark Sageman is a leading forensic psychiatrist and counterterrorism expert.
And then they blame the West for it, because the West is what puts the temptation there.
Aside from the hookers, Alaki's other friends include the 9/11 hijackers. On January 15, 2000, 2 Saudi Arabians, 24-year-old Khalid Al-Madar and 23-year-old Nawaf Al-Hazmi, arrive in Southern California.
And that's where they really settled down.
Philip Zelikow was the executive director of the 9/11 Commission.
Why would Khalid Sheikh Mohammed send 2 hijackers who speak no English to Southern California unless there's someone there to help them?
Well, this got our attention too. We noticed that the 2 men kind of get their footing, and then very quickly, though, they make a bunch of calls, including, by the way, to Al-Awlaki.
They're getting help establishing housing, things of this nature, and Anwar Al-Awlaki is right in the middle of it.
Midar and Hazmi move into this apartment complex on Mount Ada Road. It's just blocks from the largest mosque in San Diego. Yet the 2 hijackers travel across town to Al-Awlaki's mosque, over 30 minutes away.
The 2 terrorists had a special relationship with the Imam, where they met frequently on private meetings after Friday prayers at the Al-Rabat Mosque in a small anteroom off of the main floor.
This was regular contact with the 2 hijackers.
Right, it's frequent.
It's the first step on the 2 hijackers' American journey to 9/11.
That mosque at that time is like hiding in plain sight. That's just not a place you'd go looking for people.
You hit it on the nail.
Coming up, the 9/11 attacks loom, and when America is hit, Alaki becomes a media sensation.
There's always this association between Islam and terrorism.
That's Anwar Awlaki going big time, starring in A Day in the Life of an Imam. In January 2001, after 4 years of preaching at a small mosque in San Diego with 200 to 300 people, Awlaki expands his reach and preaches to thousands.
You find that there are people with very limited knowledge in Islam.
The 30-year-old moved to Northern Virginia to become an imam at the Dar al-Hijra Islamic Center in the Washington suburb of Falls Church. The mosque is one of the largest on the East Coast, and thousands attend prayers and services each week.
Allahu Akbar.
He's not a noted Islamic scholar. He doesn't have high credentials, but it doesn't seem to matter because of his personality, his aggressiveness, his charisma.
This is where I first saw Anwar. It was in the spring of 2001 when the funeral of a Yemeni woman was brought to the mosque, and he was the person who presided over the funeral. Everybody recognized him in the room.
Ali Al-Ahmed is a Saudi national and the director of the Institute for Gulf Affairs in Washington, D.C.
It was very rare for Muslim religious leaders to be both capable of speaking perfect classical Arabic and at the same time with almost accent-free American English.
Sami Allahu liman hamidah.
Awlaki lives close to the mosque here in Falls Church, and when he isn't preaching, he is pursuing a PhD in human resource development at George Washington University.
And he was a Muslim chaplain on campus.
Awlaki also attends classes at the Institute for Islamic and Arabic Sciences in America, or the IIASA, in Fairfax, Virginia.
The Institute, which was a Saudi organization, a branch of the Saudi Religious University, it was staffed by Saudi diplomats. It was part of the Saudi embassy.
It was originally set up in 1998 by Prince Bandar, who was the ambassador to the United States.
And it was the most effective organization in getting younger Americans in college to teach them about Salafi, Wahhabi Islam. That is Osama bin Laden's way of thinking.
Those who graduated received degrees in Islamic jurisprudence. The IIASA had claimed to have taught 75 members of the military.
So radical views were being taught at a school funded by the Saudis within eyeshot of the capital.
Absolutely.
In 2002, Ahmed goes to law enforcement saying a radical brand of Islam is being taught at the school. 4 years later, with the help of FBI agents, including Brian Wiedner, Homeland Security, and the IRS, the institute was shut down by the U.S. and Saudi governments. In April 2001, 2 of the 9/11 hijackers attend Awlaki's mosque. Hazmi, who knows Awlaki from San Diego, is joined by another Saudi national, 29-year-old Hani Hanjour.
Were these casual connections?
I tend to believe they were not. I believe the hijackers was a more serious and purposeful meeting of individual who truly wanted to wreak violence upon our society.
So in some sense, he was facilitating the 9/11 hijackers.
I believe that's true.
A month later, in a twist of fate, a 31-year-old Army officer named Nidal Hassan attends his mother's funeral at Awlaki's mosque. The alleged Fort Hood shooter is in medical school in nearby Bethesda, Maryland. From time to time, Hassan goes to services, but it's unknown if he ever met Awlaki in person. On that fateful morning in September, 4 planes hijacked by 19 men destroyed the lives of 3,000 people in New York City, the Pentagon in Washington, D.C., and in a field in Shanksville, Pennsylvania. And of those 5 terrorists aboard Flight 77 from Washington Dulles, 3 of them, Hanjour, Hazmi, and Midar, all know Awlaki from either California or Virginia. In the days following 9/11, Awlaki is the media's go-to guy, offering himself up for interviews with the Washington Post, National Geographic News, and PBS.
We've seen the carnage of New York City and Washington, D.C.
And he sends confusing messages about the attacks.
People are distancing themselves from the Creator. When we get away from the Scripture, when we get away from the Word of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, from Quran, this is what happens.
I'm pretty sure that he celebrated it. People would celebrate when 3,000 people died, but that's unfortunately the truth.
Do you think it emboldened him
In a sense, 9/11 opened the horizon of what's possible, what's permissible.
This recently declassified 9/11 document shows the FBI interviewed Alaki 4 times between September 15th and September 19th, 2001. Although Alaki admitted meeting with Hazmi several times, he claimed not to remember any specifics of what they discussed.
Alaki denies a connection with Hani Hanjour, but for sure he knew Hazmi and Mikhdar.
And the imam continues to live a double life.
The feds were investigating, had him under surveillance. They found ATM video surveillance of Alaki with a prostitute from the District of Columbia. He had taken that prostitute across into Virginia, and they were considering charging him under the Mann Act, which applies to pimps who transport prostitutes across state lines.
He was a Tier 1 priority. It was important to find a violation of law that applied to him.
The feds tighten their investigation on the American-born cleric, but hear how he always manages to mysteriously slip away.
In the weeks after 9/11, the American cleric Anwar al-Awlaki, born in New Mexico, is interviewed 4 times by the FBI.
Really what the U.S. is doing is just ushering the whole nation to its grave.
But he soon leaves the country, traveling first to London and then on to his ancestral home of Yemen on the Arabian Peninsula.
Now was the time to investigate and put together whatever violations of the law that might apply to Anwar al-Awlaki, since he's not there anyway.
DS agent Ray Fournier, part of the JTTF in San Diego, puts Awlaki's murky past under the microscope.
Let's do all the work now and wait for him to return.
We were working very closely with the FBI.
In 2002, Awlaki is also on the radar of former customs agent David Kane.
Everyone was very concerned about a possible second wave.
U.S. authorities are aggressively investigating Awlaki because of his connection to the hijackers.
The belief was that Anwar al-Awlaki was actually a Yemen national.
Did you go to New Mexico?
I traveled to New Mexico. I went through the Bureau of Vital Statistics records and secured his birth certificate. It was clear that this person was born in Las Cruces, New Mexico, and was actually a U.S. citizen.
Fournier uncovers more.
I looked through all the records that we have within the State Department. In 1990, he's issued a J-1 exchange visitor visa at American Embassy, Yemen. U.S. citizens do not apply for non-immigrant visas.
That is the fraud that nets Awlaki 20,000 U.S. taxpayer dollars for college. Fournier then examines his 1993 application for a U.S. passport. Awlaki files it in Colorado.
Anwar al-Awlaki gave the State Department his true and valid birth certificate from New Mexico. From a surface, cursory look at the application, there's nothing wrong with this application.
But the DS agent keeps digging. Remember the Social Security number Awlaki obtains just 1 day after arriving in Colorado in 1990? To get it, he claims he was born in Yemen, not New Mexico.
The Social Security number was derived by false statements.
And if you committed fraud there, then it transfers under the law to the passport application.
So you're looking at this paperwork and you're saying, I think I've got him.
Absolutely. There was no doubt that we had him.
And when you went to your supervisor at the JTTF, I mean, what was their reaction?
They were ecstatic. I mean, there was a jubilation that a valid felony charge would apply to Anwar al-Awlaki.
And that's where, in June of 2002, then they issued the warrant for his arrest.
Issued by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Denver, the warrant states Awlaki knowingly and unlawfully made a false statement in an application for passport. With Awlaki still out of the country, the FBI asked former customs agent David Kane for help.
And I was requested to assist their investigation by putting a record in our computer database for Awlaki.
And what can you tell us about that record system or the database? I think you're referring to the text system.
Text serves a lot of different purposes. In this case, it was a subject record that was put in for Awlaki. The FBI had asked us to put the record in simply because they had a warrant for his arrest, and they just wanted to make sure that upon arrival in the United States, they would be notified and he would be arrested.
So the clock was ticking.
Right.
But in early October 2002, Fournier is astonished to learn that the U.S. Attorney's Office in Colorado plans to pull the warrant on Alaki.
On or about the 6th day of October is when I flew up to Denver.
Fournier and another DS agent meet with reps from the U.S. Attorney's Office, which includes then Assistant U.S. Attorney David Gowett.
He mentioned that there was problems keeping this warrant active. He said that it should be rescinded.
The U.S. Attorney didn't want to talk to us on camera, but the Justice Department did provide us with a lengthy statement. The bottom line is that they felt there was not enough evidence to prosecute the case because the Social Security Administration would only testify that Alaki, quote, corrected his place of birth. This fact eliminated the crucial piece of evidence required to obtain his conviction, unquote.
I certainly argued vigorously that this warrant needed to be maintained until Mr. Alaki returns to the United States. It was clear that Mr. Gowett and, the U.S. Attorney's Office in Colorado were unwilling to listen to the arguments that were being brought forth.
So when you left that meeting, how did you feel?
Deflated. I arrested well over 300 felony arrests for passport fraud during my career in diplomatic security. I have never had a case where the warrant was rescinded.
In your entire 18 years, you never had a warrant rescinded, except this one.
Except this one.
Even stranger still is what Fournier doesn't know. Within days of his meeting in Denver, the 9/11 Commission report shows that an FBI intelligence report, also known as an electronic communication or EC, is filed on October 8, 2002 about Alaki. Just one day later, on October 9th, the paperwork to pull the warrant is submitted in Colorado. That very same day, Alaki, safely out of the country for months, boards a plane in Saudi Arabia bound for the United States.
He comes back into the United States in October of 2002 at JFK Airport in New York and is taken into custody by Customs.
These text documents obtained by author Paul Sperry show the incident log at JFK when Alaki re-enters in the early morning hours of October 10th, 2002.
Not only is he on the terrorist show up on the terrorist watch list,
he was still entered in the system as being wanted. He was taken to a secondary location. The agents attempted to validate that the warrant was still good. They had some trouble reaching the FBI agent.
I received a notification from Customs, the inspectors there.
When the FBI agent in the case file cannot be reached, border agents call Kane.
I in turn contacted the FBI to notify them that he was here and asked for further instructions to communicate to the inspectors. At that point, I was notified that the warrant had been rescinded.
But the agent, Wade Ammerman, knew it had been rescinded that morning.
The FBI knew that it had been rescinded, yes.
In this case, the agent, Wade Ammerman, was in Virginia, and this U.S. attorney was in Colorado. So can you conclude that they were working together in terms of a case?
If he was involved in discussions with the U.S. attorney to have this document pulled, he obviously would have been aware.
At 7:40 a.m., Kane calls Customs back at JFK.
I relayed the information back to the inspectors in JFK, and he was allowed to enter the country at that point.
They thanked Alaki and his family for their patience and sent them on their way.
So on October 8th, an EC is written by the FBI. On October 9th, the paperwork goes to the court. On October 10th, the judge deals with the request. Also on the 10th, Alaki comes back to the U.S. And on October 11th, it's filed by the clerk.
Certainly a lot of coincidences there.
Are they coincidences in your opinion, or more than that?
The question really is, was Alaki flipped?
Does Alaki turn and start cooperating with the FBI? That's next.
On October 10, 2002, Alaki is back in the U.S. The motion to dismiss the warrant for his arrest is filed just one day before his return.
Is it possible the warrant was pulled because Alaki told the FBI that he was now willing to cooperate with them in some way?
It's possible.
Is that a high likelihood?
I couldn't speculate on a degree of possibility. It's certainly a viable explanation. The more human sources you have in the community, the better the opportunity to have somebody report an individual.
Or did the feds want to follow him?
So you have to be very careful about being double-crossed.
Absolutely.
Alaki travels to his home in Virginia.
When he returned, he came to sell his automobile and to settle some personal effects.
After he was released from custody, he went and met with another American by the name of Ali al-Tamimi.
Anwar al-Awlaki was brought to Ali Tamimi's house by a person named Nabil Garbia, who turned out to be a government witness against Tamimi.
In October 2002, this man, Ali al-Tamimi, an American medical doctor, lives on Meadowfield Court in Fairfax, Virginia. Convicted in 2005 for recruiting jihadists, Tamimi is now serving a life sentence in prison. His then defense lawyer, Edward McMahon Jr., says at the time, Tamimi had no idea who his visitor was.
What's written in the pleadings in the case, Awlaki tried to get Ali to help him recruit young American Muslims to go join the jihad, and that Tamimi sent him out of the house and sent him away.
FBI agent Wade Ammerman, what role did he play in the case?
Wade Ammerman was the number 2 or the lead guy in Ali Tamimi's case.
The very same Wade Ammerman who was first called when Awlaki arrived at JFK.
I mean, there are a lot of things, once again, that seem like a very strange coincidence.
Whether there was ever an operational relationship with people like Awlaki, I think are questions that others in the government can answer. I just don't know. Good questions.
I asked the government, what is this guy? How did this guy get to Ali's house? Who brought him there? Did you tape it? The idea that Anwar al-Awlaki is just going to be allowed into the United States, to travel around, maybe go shopping, is preposterous to me.
I don't know if Awlaki was flipped or not. Does this look like he was flipped? It's possible.
We filed Freedom of Information Act requests with the State Department to get Ray Fournier's Awlaki passport file and with the FBI for the October 8, 2002 electronic communication. It is cited as footnote 33 on page 517 from the 9/11 Commission report. We wanted to see if it is connected.
The FBI lawyers told us is that they couldn't find it. And then when we pushed them on this particular document, they then said, well, sometimes the commission report, the footnotes are not always accurate. Have you had a lot of problems with the footnotes in the commission report?
We had a site-checking team that actually pulled all the documents referenced in our footnotes and made sure that they connected to the assertions that were in the text.
FBI Special Agent Wade Ammerman declined to speak with us. In a series of conversations with Fox News, the FBI's FOIA attorneys over a 4-week period cited Herculean efforts to find the document. They were hitting, quote, brick walls. We're trying to follow up on leads. On May 17th, they told us they found it, but we can't have it pending review because other agencies may be involved. Then, sometime in late 2002, Awlaki mysteriously slips out of the country once again. This time to England.
Anwar al-Awlaki made one of his first public appearances in London here at the East London Mosque in 2003.
He was really greeted in an almost unprecedented way by a number of Islamist organizations.
And a year later, he's on the move again, back to his other home in Sana'a, Yemen.
So this is the neighborhood of...
Neighbor Saeed Obaid showed me around Al Rabat, a middle-class area where Awlaki lived.
So his house is down there with a gate.
Anwar, his wife and children move into a house separate from his father's. A guard building is close by. We are told this mosque is where Awlaki preached.
This was a part of his religious grounding.
I don't think that he's a man that they say it in the news. A bad man, and he's from the Qaeda.
Awlaki lectured at Al-Imam University in Sana'a. While it claims to be a center of Islamic and Western study, critics brand it a breeding ground for extremists. Among its alumni, American Taliban John Walker Lynn. Its founder, Abdul Majid al-Zindani, is a red-bearded cleric who lectures on women's brain power and claims to have cured AIDS. He was also once the spiritual advisor to Osama bin Laden and declared by Washington a specially designated global terrorist. An Awlaki connection to Zindani? He was vice president of the American chapter of Zindani's Charitable Society for Social Welfare, a charity the FBI claims helped raise funds for terrorists. In mid-2006, though, Awlaki runs into trouble here. He is arrested and thrown into a high-security prison.
After his release from prison in late 2007, Awlaki apparently felt the heat was on in Sana'a too. So he left the Yemeni capital and headed south to his ancestral province of Shabwa and the rugged mountains there.
Tough terrain, however, is no barrier to spreading the word in a digital world. Via websites, DVDs, and teleconferences, Alaki's lectures and sermons are reaching a wide English-speaking audience. One of the other ways Alaki gets his word out is through this man, Yemeni freelance journalist and, some might say, Alaki mouthpiece, Abdullah Haider Sheh. He says he's known Alaki for years and is in regular contact. He's also brother-in-law of Zindani. I sat down with Sheh. He sticks hard to the line, despite mounting evidence to the contrary, that Alaki simply provides inspiration for terrorists, not direction.
You deny that flatly.
Yes, this is not true. It is not true.
Especially regarding the two recent terror incidents Alaki has been most clearly associated with. The failed airplane bombing attempt by Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib last Christmas, and last November's Fort Hood killing spree by alleged shooter Major Nidal Hassan, which left 13 dead and dozens wounded. It's reported that Hassan communicated with Alaki via emails.
You got mail.
And we asked his attorney, Colonel John Galligan, about them.
We have made requests for the emails that I've read about in the press that allegedly went on between al-Awlaki and Major Hassan. They have not been made available to us.
The Army psychiatrist considered himself a devout Muslim, but he enjoyed going to this strip club for lap dances. This is Hassan's seedy, rundown apartment. Found among his belongings was this business card that reads SOA, Soldier of Allah.
I was told by a Yemeni source that within the emails, Hassan does use the acronym SOA, Soldier of Allah.
Even if I knew, I would not be able to comment on that. I have not seen all of them. My understanding is that he sent 21 emails. Al-Awlaki basically answered only 2 of them.
Sageman says one of Hassan's emails contains this bizarre request.
Hassan wanted to have a kind of fundraising and wanted Al-Awlaki to kind of present the prices. And Al-Awlaki said, I'm not traveling to the U.S.
If you saw the emails, you wouldn't find anything that suggests that he was directly involved.
Could we see them?
You can pay to see them.
Fox News declined. Sheh continues to help sell the Alaki story to Western news organizations. That story is not always the way it seems. This tape of Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib allegedly at a terrorist training camp aired recently on ABC News. It was later shown to be doctored. New images rehashed with al-Qaeda footage released in January 2009. While Alaki is well known abroad, we found few people who would talk about him in Yemen.
Are you familiar with him? Did you know him?
I don't have any idea about him.
Coming up next, was Alaki more involved with the 9/11 hijackers than previously reported? And he becomes the first U.S. citizen to be targeted on the CIA's capture or kill list.
The hunt is on for Anwar Alaki. Most recently, Faisal Shahzad, the alleged Times Square bomber, says Alaki's sermons inspired him.
He is a passive person. People come to him.
Alaki is believed to be hiding here in Yemen's Shabwa province.
This is a new thing to say for his connections with Al-Qaeda. It's a very new thing.
So the noose is tightening?
Yes, it's tightening, yes.
The Yemeni government has announced it is actively hunting Alaki in connection with recent terror incidents and associations with Al-Qaeda. And that CIA capture or kill order has upset tribal leaders.
When I heard about the capture-kill order, I thought, where is the justice there?
As Alaki reportedly remains moving around to avoid more strikes, we tried reaching out to his father, Nasser.
Dr. Alaki?
The former University of New Mexico 2002 Alum of the Year defended his son. When I asked for an interview,
he said, tell them I am not interested.
Although Yemen's leaders say they are hunting Alaki, they also say they will not extradite him if captured.
And in a virtual world, the American terrorist message is far from muzzled.
The administration is refusing to release the emails exchanged between myself and Nidal.
With the upcoming trial of 9/11 mastermind Khalid Sheikh Mohammed, questions remain about Alaki.
So then you've got 2 theories. Theory number 1 is that all those contacts he had with the 9/11 plotters back then in 2000 and 2001 were innocent, but he just gets radicalized into an Al-Qaeda guy later. Theory number 2 is actually he's with Al-Qaeda all along, and the coincidences are not coincidences.
Does it look like KSM tried to protect information about activities inside the U.S.?
KSM was asked many times about whether there were contacts in the United States, and he always, from the reports we could read of those interrogations, he always seemed to blow smoke in answering questions like that.
After our report first aired, Virginia Congressman Frank Wolf wrote FBI Director Robert Mueller asking for more information about Awlaki's return.
The timing issue just is too much of a coincidence to be reality.
A former senior investigator with the 9/11 Commission told Fox he believes Awlaki's arrest warrant was never provided to them. Zelikow says it will take subpoena power to see everything from government agencies.
I want to see everything in this time frame.
And that's what Congress could do.
Yes.
Ray Fournier has worked over 28 years in public service. He says he is proud of the work he and other agents did pursuing the American terrorist.
I had a privilege to serve with great people in the Bureau of Diplomatic Security and in the State Department at large, and at JTTF, to be fair. We did a lot of great cases. But certainly Anwar Awlaki is a sour note on all that.
The case against Anwar Awlaki raises questions that remain unanswered. Was he a key part of the 9/11 plot? Did the FBI manage to turn him into an informant? And what exactly has been his role in recent terror attacks around the world? But one thing is clear, he has turned on the country of his birth and has called for jihad against his fellow Americans. As a target of the CIA, his clock is ticking. For Fox News Reporting, I'm Bill Hemmer.